All right, here is 6.1.2. America enters the war. The war has started in Europe. Essential question: what's the significance of the Zimmerman note and the submarine to U.S. entry into World War I? At the time, it's called the Great War. Those two things exceedingly important. We'll start looking at in a little bit here when we're done with the outline notes, partnering up with a neighbor and looking at the Zimmerman note itself. Is going to be a note sent by Arthur von Zimmerman, the German Foreign Secretary, who is in Germany, to German Ambassador to the United States in Washington, D.C., Johann Heinrich von Bernstorff. And he is given a task and a message, and he is going to do something with it at a particular time. So you'll read about that in the actual Zimmerman note. We'll quickly review it here today. Also, when the war starts, the response to the United States is really one of a great deal of shock, and also in the world. It wasn't expected. Our mindset is isolate. Geography is something that has allowed us to do that for quite a while. We feel safe over here. 90% at least in the country aren't interested in war. President Wilson's messages stayed neutral and impartial in thought and deed. Privately, though, he saw that a German victory was very possible and harmful to the world, and he's watching closely. How is the United States drawn into the war? There are several factors. One, there is a long history here, blood ties as well, close ties to Britain and France. With Britain, these check marks applying to Britain on the right-hand side here, we have a similar language, bloodlines. We still kind of see Britain as Mother England. We've got a positive relationship with them at this point in time in history. We have a similar system of laws, religiously Protestant on the Christian side of things. And with France, going back to the American Revolution, they helped us win the war without Lafayette and King Louis signing on the Treaty of Alliance with the colony, the United States at the time, the Articles of Confederation, the government of the Articles of Confederation. It would not have happened, as well as several other countries helping. So there is knowledge of that in the American mindset, and there is kind of the idea here, and you'll see in some posters and poster show I'll post for you, that this is something we kind of owe them, and we feel a little bit obligated in that sense. But one of the key factors here is industry and profits is going to draw things in. Despite being neutral, we will still be trading in an area that is at war. Kind of risky. Going to get your nose bloodied a little bit here when you're doing this kind of thing. So we're not truly neutral in terms of the deeds. And when wars start, we have the opportunity to make money. The United States companies are allowed to trade with both sides. You'll see there here our key year here on our timeline, 1914, when it begins. We're trading increasingly with all other European nations, with Britain and with France, but things will start to die off with Germany, and we'll see events and reasons why that is happening here in a little bit. By and large, that is partly because of that drop-off here, is partly because of a British blockade on Germany. They have the biggest navy on the planet, and they're trying to shut down supplies coming into the enemy, starve them out, and kill their ability to fight without having any supplies. Britain and France also borrow billions of dollars from U.S. banks, so bankers and the financial institutions are involved here. So when Americans give money to one side in the war, they probably want a return, and to get a return, that side probably has to win. So this money-making aspect of the war is something that's going to draw us in eventually, and probably also you have to say, tweaks our mindset as to who we should side with. But events and what goes on in the war also helps, we'll see as well. This helps bring about an economic boom. All right, industry, producing weapon supplies, that kind of thing. So how neutral are we really? Not that neutral. German unlimited submarine warfare is going to be the final thing that will tip the scales for the United States. And it is the thing that is going to draw us into the war. You got to know that. U-boats are a fairly new piece of technology at the time. The first U-boat or undersea boat was used in the Civil War, but it becomes the core of the German Navy, as we talked about before. Germany is landlocked, and this isn't a great place to get ships in and out of, surface ships. The British have the biggest navy and could easily block off and defeat any kind of forces coming from Germany here. So they go underwater and sneak under the water to try and get by these British forces, and they're very successful. And they're going to win the war by sinking all kinds of supply ships coming into Britain, putting up a blockade of their own to starve them out. And they first just start start out sinking supply ships, but we'll see that eventually it's going to turn into desperation. They're going to start sinking all ships. Allied propaganda is another factor here. The Allies are feeding the United States and other countries in the world a strong dose of what they are seeing, whether it be completely accurate or not, about how the war is being fought by the Germans and the German side of things, and it has a strong effect. Stories of poor little Belgium, which this poster depicts submarine attacks in the high seas. The submarine was a new weapon, and it was considered to be kind of a bad, evil weapon because it was considered unfair. It was just kind of not okay or appropriate to sneak around and essentially, shoot someone in the back is what this was equated to in war. And so this made the Germans look bad and look evil, and this is portrayed quite a bit as well. That kind of underwater underhandedness. So people get involved in this kind of in a psychological aspect, an emotional aspect, and want to help the Allies. And the submarine warfare and sinking of ships seems kind of dastardly. February 1915, Germany retaliates. They announce a policy of submarine warfare around Britain. They're going to sink almost everything possible. The submarine is so new that there's no rules for it. There's no provisions for it in international law. We talked about that before, and that there were rules for war, which sounds very strange, but they had been setting them up. It wasn't accounted for here. Warship rules, a surface ship, the rules are if you're going to take on an enemy ship or deal with a ship, stop it, sink it, you have to stop it, board the ship, evacuate everybody before you sink it. Submarines, though, don't have that advantage. If you're going to sink somebody, you don't want to pop up and say, hey, I'm going to sink you. You have so much time only, get off the ship. They did do that to begin with, but ships tended to start camouflaging guns on their decks and then start shooting at these submarines. And these submarines are not very well armored. Their defense is not being seen. And so this is something that the German commanders in Germany stopped doing because it was not effective. And so this is a problem. Strategy versus reality, pragmatism, rules, all that kind of thing. Germany warns the United States also and the other countries in the world that, if you continue to aid Britain, something's going to happen. And this is an example here. This is an advertisement taking out in a newspaper in Washington, D.C., warning travelers that war is going on. And in these areas where you travel, it is a war zone, and you are going to be in danger. Do not travel. And so Americans, though, still travel. Germany promises to stay neutral and try not to attack neutral shipping, but they warn mistakes are going to happen. Wilson decides to continue shipping goods to the Allies anyway with this. He warns Germany that they would be held to strict accountability if U.S. ships are attacked and citizens are killed. And here we go with one of them, the Lusitania being sunk May 7th, 1915. It's one of kind of those sister ships to the Titanic, same kind of ship. It's the holiday cruise line for Disney type of ship. Germany sinks British passenger ships and of this type and others after that. We'll talk about 1,000 people die, 128 of them are Americans, and Germany promises to warn neutral ships before attacking after this to try and placate and keep Americans happy and keep them out of the war. Germany does not want the United States into the war. So United States Congress basically passes legislation as a response to this to start increasing the size of the Army and building up new ships. Our military is very small, very unprepared compared to these European nations, not even close. But it is causing a response in the United States. At the same time, though, Wilson still wants war, but it is swaying public opinion a little bit. One key thing here, a guy that discovered the Titanic, a guy named Henry Ballard, actually later on, a few years later, found and discovered the Lusitania and this ship and the shipping company, and this Britain always stated that there was no ammunition or war goods on there. But guess what? They did find ammunition on there. So in a sense, they were putting war materials on a passenger ship and putting them at risk. And Germany felt and or knew that there was that kind of stuff on there. Who knows? Through their spy network, perhaps they did really know. Wilson's diplomatic approach was seeming to make progress, keeping the peace until August 1915. And the British passenger liner HMS Arabic was sunk, killing 2 Americans. Germany agreed not to sink unarmed passenger ships without warning. Later on in 1916, we have, I'll go back to that a little bit. Oops. Killing 2 Americans, and Germany agreed not to sink unarmed passenger ships without warning. I guess I already said that. And so it's keeping the peace. But then again, later on, a French ship is sunk by a German submarine in 1916. It's called the Sussex, and Wilson threatens to cut off diplomatic relations if this continues to happen. Germany says, okay, as long as the United States gets the Allies to lift the blockade on Germany, we'll stop doing this without warning. But of course, that's not going to happen. We weren't going to ask them to lift the blockade because it's war, and Wilson accepts the pledge, but not the condition. So it's kind of an insecure, kind of a little victory that's had here in this Sussex Pledge. The Sussex Pledge is important. It's going to be broken very soon. And one of the things that happens on the big picture, big scene of things, is that in 1917, with Russia in the war, 1917 is the year, important to know, that Russia goes out of the war. With problems of its own, they're poor, they're backward, they're not nearly as well equipped in any aspect of their country or society to fight this war. They basically experience a revolution. This is the beginning of the Communist Revolution. This is Vladimir Lenin and the Reds coming in, and eventually by 1920-21 establishing the Soviet Union, the USSR. Starvation at home, soldiers fighting without guns, freezing to death. It's a revolution again of the working class. We all have talked about this as being the proletariat before, right? We've heard about that, and the working class with the Industrial Revolution, the rise of unions back in the United States and in Europe. This brings them out of the war, and the treaty that they sign, Russia signs with Germany, is the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. Gives Germany a huge amount of money, a huge amount of resources and territory. This territory being very agricultural, gives them food supplies that were vastly, desperately needed. But this war had 2 fronts. There was the Eastern Front over here to your right, and over here on the Western Front, Germany and Austria-Hungary are basically in a vice, being attacked from 2 sides. Now, with the Russians out, what do you imagine Germany's going to do with all these forces over here, or at least a good portion of them? Bring them over to the other side. And now we've got this idea in Germany's mindset that we can throw all of our forces into one big attack into the Western Front, and we can win the war. And at the same time, the British blockade is having a big impact on life in Germany. There is food shortages there. They need to do something or they're going to lose. There's soldiers that are running away from the army and leaving the front lines. But at the same time, the German government is saying, we can win, we can win, we can win. So, but they realize that they're in a desperate mode here. And 1917 gives them the opportunity to make a decision. It's a very big decision. Let's just resume unrestricted submarine warfare. Big to note here. Break the Sussex Pledge and make it a one-front war, because the Bolshevik Revolution, the Russian Revolution, has pulled Russia out of the war. And they believe that the United States, they can win and bring France and Britain to their knees before the United States comes in. Look at how far away they are. They're very unprepared militarily. There's nothing they can do to get over here in time to save the Allies. So this is their strategy and their idea, and this is going to be kind of reflected in this Zimmerman note coming up. And so Germany has the means to alleviate their food shortages and change their strategy here. It's going to be all out, do or die, let's win it in 1917, 1918. And so they go to unlimited submarine warfare in January 1917, reversing this policy and breaking the Sussex Pledge is what you want to add here. And they'll sink everything that is coming into Allied ports. They don't care what it is. And so President Wilson is angry. He breaks off ties, diplomatic relations with Germany at this point in time. When a country does that, that basically means there's one step away from war. Read the PDF, primary document here, the letter, or the note from Arthur von Zimmerman to Bernstorff in 1917. It says basically that it's supposed to go to Mexico when there is a war declared by the United States on Germany. Send this message to Mexico, offer them an alliance, offer them money, offer to help them regain lost territory. This is all about the Mexican-American War, 1848, that brought about that whole conflict over slavery in the West and the new territory in the West prior to the Civil War, right? They know that there's animosity there. When the United States enters the war, bring this message to them. And then also send a little message to Japan. And let them know that they would like to make an alliance. And this unrestricted warfare on the high seas by submarines will force this surrender soon. Why is this a threat? Why does this cause people inquiries in the United States? This is obviously a plot against the United States. It's a threat to invade. Why would they offer Japan an alliance? Well, we have the Philippines over there. If the Philippines were by chance attacked by Japan, we would have to send forces over there. It draws our attention and spreads us out. If Mexico were to invade our southern border, think Pancho Villa and the chaos that was going on with the Mexican Civil War down there. If they were to attack our southern border to take back territory that was lost in 1848 on the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, that would draw American forces and energy away and allow Germany to do their thing with a lot less harassment. And so this Zimmerman note comes out. It gets actually captured and leaked out into the press. The American public hears about it. Wilson basically uses this as part of the declaration of war and justification for the declaration of war that's coming very soon, and starts talking about the Allies are good people. They are the good side, and they're a democracy fighting against autocracy ruled by a dictator with unlimited power, which basically they are. All right, and so here is a cartoon of the Kaiser whispering in the ear of someone from Mexico. So America favors the war now heavily because of this. More and more ships are being sunk. Wilson's cabinet starts to push for war. His advisors, April 2nd, 1917, Wilson asks for a declaration of war against Germany. It passes. Then this brought about the Selective Service Act. And this declaration of war actually came about when there were a few other American ships sunk on the high seas. And with that declaration of war, the Selective Service Act is passed, calling for a draft of all males from 18 to 45 in the military. All right. Some left side review questions here for you to take a look at. You can look at it online a little bit later for your left side in your notebook. This is the end of this lesson. The next thing you would be doing is looking at the primary document, the Zimmerman note, answering the questions there, and then getting into the next video cast lesson 6.1.3. And after that, you'll do an exit ticket, and you have then 6.1.4 for home learning. See you next time. Happy holidays.